Hello there. Very good evening and welcome to tonight's program. I'm your host, Eddy Layne, and of course, I'm joined by Bishop Juan Edghill. Bishop Juan Edghill is the Minister of Public Works. Minister Bishop Edghill, good evening and welcome to the program.
Greetings, Ed. So good to have you and so good to be with you after such a long time. Greetings to all your viewers and your listeners, and I look forward for a very exciting program this evening.
Certainly, Bishop. I think you hit the nail on the head, because since August 2nd of last year, I think that is when the morning we did our last program, and the Saturday evening on August 1st, I think it was our final evening program where we were talking to the citizens of this country, the supporters of the PPP, and the Guyanese at large, telling them about what was happening with the elections and the attempts to rig the elections and so forth. But we would have taken a break. I would appreciate, we had Dr. Finale sworn in on the 2nd of August as president. I had a cabinet put in place shortly after. And you guys, Bishop Edghill, you were one of the ministers, would have gotten to work almost immediately, trying to first and foremost ensure that we satisfy the needs of the people of this country, people who were suffering, people who lost hope across the country. We were trying to rebuild, to let them regain hope. And of course, while doing that, we're also focusing on cleaning up the mess that the APNU+AFC would have left us after 5 years in office. Well, more than 5 years, because they stole a couple of months. So this is the opportunity. We are back to talk to the citizens again, Bishop. I'm going to give you a chance to give some opening comments before we actually focus on our issues that we want to focus tonight.
Well, Ed, if you will recall, over those months of struggle, one of the things that we said, good will always prevail over evil. Light will always outstrip darkness. And the good people of Guyana will someday be liberated from this corrupt, dangerous APNU+AFC. We have had that. It's now 6 months since Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali has been sworn in as president, named his cabinet, and working for the people of Guyana. We've had an emergency budget which sought to bring hope to Guyanese, revive business, restore confidence in the economy, secure livelihoods. And I'm glad that even in the COVID-19 pandemic era, we are not in a marked time situation, but Guyana is progressing. And Ed, I would want to start this discussion this afternoon by reminding all Guyanese we're not where we were. We're not yet at our final destination, but certainly we're not in that marked time, do nothing, do little era. Guyana is moving again. People are smiling again. Our young people are dreaming again. The country, the economy, businesses, they are booming, moving, and we are making progress. And that's a good place to start.
Thank you very much, Bishop Edghill. Bishop, tonight we want to focus on an issue that I think touches every single Guyanese. As long as you're a taxpayer in this country, this is an issue that we have, a lot of people are very passionate about and always want to see governments address. When we were in opposition, we've been talking about instances of the deep-rooted corruption in the coalition administration. We have presented hundreds of cases, Bishop Edghill, of where the coalition was stealing, pilfering the treasury, converting monies to their own use, individual ministers. We had all the instances. Now that we've been in government, we're in government for the last 6 months or so, we have had the opportunity, Bishop, to get a first-hand look at the level of corruption that the APNU+AFC was involved in while in office. And I know you're a member of the Public Accounts Committee, where a member of the APNU+AFC, a former minister, has been the subject of discussion of that PAC for the last couple of weeks, where the instances of corruption under that particular minister under the APNU+AFC are so many that he has taken up, maybe since the PAC starts sitting, you guys have been dealing with the corrupt practices of that particular individual. So first and foremost, I want us to start in a broad sense, Bishop Edghill, to deal with the issue of corruption that we have now, we're now seeing, and we're now being presented with the evidence, the bare evidence of how corrupt the coalition cabal was while they held on to this country, while the people of this country received absolutely no services. When you look at what is happening across the country, by the way, and you hear people talk about the benefits that they have received already in the last 6 months since the PPP has been in office, and you compare that to what the coalition did, and when you look at the level of corruption, you understand why the people of this country were not receiving services.
Well, Ed, if we're to start with the most recent corrupt project, the Ocean View International Hotel converted to COVID-19 hospital. One of the last things David Granger did before he gave up, which was seeming to be a hard thing for him to do as president, was the commissioning of the COVID-19 hospital at Layne, where they claimed that they spent some $1.8 billion to refurbish and to fix. And of course, they had the grand opening ceremony, the balloons were there, the PR and the media and the spin doctors were there to promote what a great project it was. This is COVID-19. People are dying around the world. Guyana was preparing to face the brunt of that pandemic when it eventually took hold in the country. And the hospital, the medical facility that should have been put in place, spending $1.8 billion when we took over government. And my colleague, the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, and his team went there to inspect. Let me tell you what they found. An unfinished facility. In the intensive care unit, there was no facility for oxygen. Everybody knows the need for oxygen in a COVID-19 environment, because breathing is one of the things that you must address when this virus attacks the human body. And the ICU that they said they prepared had no facility for oxygen. There were no oxygen pipes. There was nothing that you could have taken a patient in and hooked them up to oxygen. $1.8 billion. The beds were not in place. Some of the facilities were not really usable. That even if you pass now, as we do this program, and you drive by Ocean View at Layne, you will still see 6 months after works are ongoing. But this facility was declared open by the then caretaker president, saying it cost $1.8 billion. Of course, we await the Auditor General report and findings on a full investigation into this matter. And the 2020 emergency budget that I had the privilege of reading and presenting to the National Assembly, we had to make allocations to get that facility in place. All that the APNU+AFC did was to use COVID as an excuse to delay the recount, COVID as an excuse to control the political environment by charging people who were protesting, COVID as an opportunity for them to be able to get their last hurrah, so to speak, on the treasury so that they could get to grab as much as they could. So I'm just going to use that one project, the last of it in that 5-month period, February to August, when they illegally squatted in office after losing an election. Their habit did not change. They used the COVID of getting their hands on money. That was not the singular thing. When you check the spending on what they claimed they were doing on hampers for distribution and who they were paying for services in the various regions, it was fattening the pockets of their friends, their families, and their cronies, just like we were saying all the time. The books, the numbers, the vouchers, the contracts, or lack of contracts will tell you the real story. But let's come a little closer to where I have direct responsibility for. And just to give you a little peek into what I found at the Ministry of Public Works, then under Patterson, known as the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. And I'm not going to take the time tonight to talk about the bangles and the misuse for personal gifts and jewelry. Maybe we will talk about that later. But just one agency, the Maritime Administration Department, MARAD, in 2018, and Ed, I want you to remember that 2018 was the year we had local government elections. It was immediately after local government elections that the no confidence motion was filed, and in December, it was successfully passed. The vouchers are there. MARAD was used as a slush fund in 2018 for political purposes, and I dare say political campaigning. And at Ferguson, who was then the minister within the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, vouchers exist. Trip to Essequibo, 600,000. Trips to Wakenham, 350,000. Trip to Region 9, 300,000. And it is unending in the spending. And every minister, provision is made in the budget for them to travel across the country to do their ministerial job. Going to an agency that has nothing to do with what you're going to Essequibo to do or anything, and taking money from that agency is using that agency as a slush fund for political purposes, a clear corrupt act, a clear misuse of public funds, and a clear abuse of privilege. Right now on my desk, I'm reviewing those vouchers. But it didn't start in 2018, Ed. 2015, when they assumed office, the furnishings of ministers' offices are paid for through the budget process for office equipment and furniture. But there again, We are finding vouchers, both from the Demerara Harbour Bridge, as well as from the Marad. Household items, king-size bed sets, chest of drawers, coffee table,
Bishop, I
television
was
sets.
I was telling somebody the other day, when you look at Patterson, the man was just dealing in kings. So he was getting his gifts, his bangles and everything from King's Jewelry, and he was busy buying king-size beds for his personal home. So, and I interrupt you there, but you see, when you listen to what is happening, and you're just talking about Marad, one agency, I'm still trying to figure out why a minister is going to do work for Marad in Region 9, in the Deep South or something. You
But
know,
even if they're doing work for Mara, that should be paid from the line item in the budget where ministers travel. It's double dipping.
exactly. And we know about ministers taking 9,000 US to travel, and there is no evidence of them refunding the money and all sorts of things.
Well, I am looking at those transactions right now because remember, we wrote about this and we spoke about this. Patterson taking $9 million to go to Macau in China, and then the money ended up in his personal bank account. But we're also seeing, and the people of Guyana must know these things, that the minister is using funds from Marad to upgrade his ticket to first class to travel. So here it is, he's going on government's business. When you are traveling on government's business, there is a line item in the budget where you get your money for your hotel, your per diem, your meals, and your airfare, approved by cabinet. The accountant general gives you that money to travel to the conference and wherever you are going. Here it is. A cabinet decision exists. And after the fact, because I don't like the class that I'm supposed to be traveling in, perhaps business class is not adequate. You have to move from business class to first class. And Ed, I have seen vouchers that show that $3 million+ were paid for upgrade of tickets.
Wow.
So what we were telling the Guyanese people was child's play compared to what we are discovering now. And like I said, I haven't gone back to the purchase of gifts because some of what was disclosed is not the sum total of these transactions. So there was always the misuse of public funds and the abuse of privilege by this cabal. And the evidence is there that Patterson and Ferguson, while at the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, being placed there to serve the people of Guyana. And Eddie, let me tell you, so that people could get a grasp. When the APNU+AFC took office, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority had a reserve of over $1 billion, $1 billion. That means 1,000 million. In the last budget, with Larry London as the chairman of GCAA, we've had to put 460 million in the budget to support the GCAA. The reserves disappeared. Marad, their balance sheet was showing billions. And that is why they went heavily after these agencies and used them as slush funds to do their thing, as the man in the street would put it. And I'm just using two agencies there. Now, we have to find support for these very same agencies that had significant numbers in their ballot sheets because of mismanagement, maladministration, and more importantly, corruption, accompanying incompetence.
Bishop, so far, and you only touched on the small things, if you want. But as Patterson say, the little things. You only touched on the little things, you know, the upgrade.
I haven't got contracts yet.
Exactly, and you haven't even touched the asphalt plant and the feasibility study for the Demerara Harbor Bridge. You're talking here about, as Patterson usually puts it, the little things. You know, he loves to use that hashtag little things. So the upgrade of tickets, 9,000 from Mara to go to Macau, you know, king size bed, king's jewelry gifts. You haven't touched the big things yet. And people, the magnitude of those little things will tell you what is to come when you start examining the hundreds of millions of dollars.
The magnitude of those little things tells you the character and the ethos of this group that governed. It describes it.
Never again. Never again. I don't think the Guyanese people would want a corrupt cabal, as in the APNU+AFC, who cared nothing about the people of this country. There is no evidence, and you're seeing people are doing testimonials by themselves. The PPP is not going to them to tell them to do testimonials. They're posting it on social media, talking about the benefits they're receiving from this government. While the APNU+AFC cabal was busy furnishing homes, ministers under that regime were renting homes from themselves. They own the house and they pay themselves a rent at the expense of the taxpayers of this country. Ministers were enjoying the good life for them alone, while the people of this country were suffering. People couldn't get jobs. The COVID-19 pandemic, not a $20 was placed in the hands of the people of this country to support them. The PPP, while in opposition before we came to office, were busy distributing hampers, masks, trying to protect the people of this country. And when we came to office, His Excellency did what was necessary to ensure monies were in the hands of the people, while you had a cabal that were busy taking care of that small group of cronies and themselves.
But apart from the purchase of personal protective equipment, medical supplies, and getting good medical attention to the people of Guyana, the PPPC embarked on the 25,000 cash grant initiative, something that the APNU+AFC could have not even conceptualized. The people are happy and they're singing praises of this administration every day.
Bishop, you know, and I want us to go back to the corruption, the level, deep-rooted corruption by this cabal, this APNU+AFC. You spoke about two agencies and the small things. You haven't touched contracts. Right now, Patterson is before the courts. Patterson is before the courts because of monies that were spent unapproved that I don't think he can fully account for. But that is just one minister. We had the Ministry of Health, $600+ million in medical supplies that nobody seemed to be able to explain how the contract was awarded on the basis of emergency, but 9-10 months down the road, the drugs weren't delivered. Ocean View Hotel was storing drugs in hotel rooms. Drugs were being stored there, being damaged because what? They were trying to find ways to put monies in the hands of their cronies. You had the drug bond, and this is now just another ministry, Ministry of Health, then Public Health. The drug bond, the $12.5 million a month for a house to store condoms, that was basically it. And we can go through the list. We can go through the list, Bishop. We know all the acts of corruption. I think it's over maybe about 300 to 400 instances that we have documented. We have documented, and we're not talking here. We're just talking about, if we talk about contracts, we're going to take at least a year to discuss contracts, corrupt contracts by this cabal.
Listen, Ed, let me just give you an example. of 3 contracts that were issued under Patterson's leadership, Patterson's hand. The leg 1, Stelling. A contract almost $500 million. It is not yet completed. I could give you another example. The road to St. Cuthbert's Mission. Another contract issued by Patterson. Signed on the 31st of December. Last day of the year, after the passage of the no confidence motion. Not yet completed, almost failed. I could tell you about the contract for the shoring up of the river defense at Spikeland in Region 10, given to a contractor. He has abandoned, the work not completed. And you know what? All of the contractors whose names I did not mention, Mr. Patterson should be ashamed, because they were all AFC supporters, people who are on Facebook, recorded on social media, cussing out Irfan Ali. They were Patterson's friends. So I don't speak here in vacuum and isolation. The one common thing with these failed contractors is their political activism. They can't get the work done. So sometimes you gotta ask why they can't get the work done. Winning money there. And then, of course, we got the Cheddy Jagan International Airport, which was something that we were discussing in Parliament and out of Parliament, where we were paying more and getting less. And I guess Guyana is highly appreciative of the wise and astute leadership of President Ali, in that now we have gotten the contractor who was encouraged by Patterson to do the lawlessness that they were doing, to correct themselves and to give us what we demanded since we got into office. And we have a new agreement that what they have to do at a cost that the contractor has to pay. Why this couldn't happen all the time? We have an asphalt plan, which I wrote about, and I visited. Almost another $500 million spent. It has not produced 1 ton of asphalt as yet. Another Patterson. The man has the Midas touch. And Ed, while we are doing that, spending monies on all of these contracts, the Demerara Harbor Bridge is collapsing. They didn't do the maintenance that needed to be done. Hinterland generators were not maintained, so the generators were collapsing and people couldn't have electricity. The boats for transport and harbors were all not properly maintained. And if I go to tell you the kind of transactions that took place in that sector on the Patterson and Force, it reeks of corruption. I will tell the people of Guyana a story that is real. A gentleman came to my office and he mentioned to me, Ed, that he would like to buy 2 vessels that are abandoned. One is at the Berbice River and the other one is in the Mazaruni River. So I said, if they are scrap iron, make an offer, because the Transport and Harvest Department is in need of money. They haven't paid their NIS for their workers for years. They're in debt. The PAYE to GRA haven't been paid over for years. So the man came back with an offer of $8 million. So I said, you sure about this? He said, it is scrap. So I got the Director General of the Maritime Administration, who's also a surveyor of the ship, to get his people to give me some estimates of what these vessels will cost, the scrap and the rest of it. I got a document that showed $350 million was spent on MV Baramani, which is one of the boats the man wants to buy that is presently at the Mazaruni dockyard in the Mazaruni River. And the man is offering $8 million to the boat. And we spent $350 million quite recently on the Patterson and Ferguson, buying spares and all the rest of it for this boat.
Well, the records, Bishop, if I should correct you, maybe the records showing that we spend that, but clearly we didn't spend that. And we know
Well,
that
the checks are drawn. The checks are drawn, but the parts are not there. Where the money gone? Where is the money? And this is the sad story. Huge contracts, but the monies are not in works when you check it on the ground. At the Public Accounts Committee, 2016, under Patterson's watch, we are examining scales that he bought or purportedly bought that is not yet in the possession of the ministry. 2021, I am now the minister, and a transaction that where the monies were drawn for scales to be bought for the Ministry of Public Infrastructure is not there yet. The questions are still to be answered. This is the level of mismanagement that we found. I went into a ministry where everything was broken.
or stolen.
Well, so that's the corruption we're talking about.
The reality is, Bishop Edghill, you know, as far as I see it, you know, anything this guy Patterson touches is either broken or becomes corrupt. Because you look at it, every single area you examine with Patterson, there is some shady transaction somewhere along the line. And his colleague, the other one that was moved to housing, Ferguson, was no different. And Bishop, we don't have the time this evening to touch the other sectors, to touch the Ministry of Finance, to touch the 18 million and how they treated the 18 million signing bonus. We don't have the opportunity to go in details with regards to Ocean View and the procurement of drugs and medical supplies. We don't have the opportunity tonight to look at the land deals. That's a whole different story by itself, where people were buying land for $200 and selling for 200 million and all sorts of things. So the scale of corruption and the amount of monies that were stolen from this country by the APNU+AFC cabal could have transformed the lives of our citizens, all of them. The amount of monies that they spent. Would you Banton show $50 million? You remember that?
And of course, a denial. Because every time they do something, they deny until they're caught, with their hands down in the jar.
I don't think there's any other government that is in this part of the world or in the Caribbean that is as corrupt as the APNU+AFC cabal. And they sought to institutionalize corruption, Bishop, because they meant thief in the money and sign for it. That is the situation we have. They thief in the money and they sign a voucher. The only thing that they stop short of doing on those vouchers is to write that we took these monies for ourselves. That is what they were doing. They were making corruption as part of the structure of the government. And what happens? They stole, the people suffer for 5 years.
Well, the people became fed up. And that is why Charon Das, having listened to the debate, both in the public spaces and in the parliament, voted yes, yes, yes. That is why the people of Guyana having listened to the debate in the media, in their communities, when we came across the length and breadth of Guyana, voted resoundingly for the PPPC to come to office. And if I tell you one of the things that the PPPC would have learned from the APNU+AFC is what not to do in government. Because the APNU+AFC have done some of the worst things that their violations were so terrible. And they were presumptuous enough to present themselves decency, honesty, and integrity when they were everything else except that.
But they're so
And that is the worrisome thing.
They're so shameless, Bishop. It's a shameless bunch of people. You have a situation in Linden where the people thief the money for the pig pen. You got one man building barbershop, collect the money, and the land is still empty, the stuff packed up by his home. You have one man managing a chicken pen, but he's overseas, collect 2 point something million dollars. That is how the cabal was living. That is why they could have afforded to.
What about the man who's taking his salary as an advisor on petroleum? An advisor on petroleum, and he has no experience whatsoever in the field. He now sits in parliament.
You had one man with 4 jobs. He was working at Region 3. He was working at Chronicle. He was working somewhere else, and he had a job at local government ministry, collecting 4 salaries. And those are the very guys.
And living in a government house.
And living in a government house. Those are the guys who are now going to parliament and sit there to point fingers, to say, oh, and incidentally, Bishop, the man is a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and who is talking about transparency and accountability.
Shameless, examining public officers about their spending. That is why I'm saying, if the APNU+AFC will put in the Public Accounts Committee to scrutinize government spending, men of such notoriety, the people of Ghana must be able to look and see their content, their quality, their character, their thinking, their modus operandi. And people must be able to shake their head and discuss and say, is that the best we could do?
I mean, we're almost out of time. We have maybe about 3 or 4 minutes more, Bishop. But when we look, I mean, and now we have the opportunity. And I always recall in 2014 into 2015, when we were campaigning for the elections, Vice President Dr. Jagdeo repeatedly warned the people of this country about the APNU+AFC and their attitude. They cannot keep their hands to themselves.
Sticky fingers.
They have sticky, all of them. They couldn't, they were warned, the people of this country were warned, and they saw it for 5 years. While they suffer, you had people living the good life, a small group of people living the good life. But that is why we always say, and the people of this country are saying loud and clear now, never again APNU+AFC, never again. I don't think the people of this country ever want them anywhere close to the treasury, because it's not going to be like before. And these are the very people who are fighting to manage the oil resources. Think about they getting their hands on the oil money in this country. It would have been a whole different game. The country wasn't doing that well because they destroyed it they inherited a very good country, a healthy economy in 2015. By 2018, 2017, they had destroyed it. And despite that, feeling. Dear Bishop?
Yes, I'm there. Looks like we did lose signal for a few moments, but I'm saying that is why President Ali, Vice President Jagdeo, and all of us in the cabinet, we have to embrace each other with standards that satisfies the demand of the population. transparency, accountability, and a standard that meets the measure of good governance. Because the people of Guyana are intolerable, totally fed up with public officials who use public office for personal gain and personal enrichment. People want to see public service. And Eddie, if there is one thing that we are hearing when we go across this country, people are satisfied that they are seeing their ministers, they are seeing their leaders in their communities addressing their issues. And this is what was absent for a long time in Guyana under the APNU+AFC. People are seeing their ministers. Their matters are being resolved. The president himself leading the outreach to Essequibo, to Region 6, to Region 10. Ministers traversing the interior, the hinterland, the coastland, farmers, young people, young professionals, the nurses, the doctors, the religious community. Minister Vidya Prasad engaging women and vulnerable groups, the disabled. Minister Frank Anthony ensuring that our health services are provided in a very proficient manner. And we can look across all of our ministers, everyone without exception, are out there, visible, working for the people, delivering public service. And the comments and the commendation from the people is that that is what they want to see. We are energized, we are visionary, and we are public service oriented in our approach for the building and modernizing of Guyana. So here we are, Ed, talking about the corruption and what kept this country back. But we also offer ourselves in public service for the building of Guyana.
There is hope, and the people of this country realize there is hope, Bishop Edghill. They realize that they have a government that they can trust, a government that they can depend on, and a government, as we say in Guyanese terms, who have their backs, who look out for them, who ensure that they benefit from the resources of this country, that the lives of every citizen is improved. It may not happen overnight. It will not happen overnight. But what is evident is that the People's Progressive Party Civic is committed as a government to improving the lives of the people of this country and to manage the resources of this country in a transparent, honest, and accountable manner. Bishop Edghill, I want to thank you for joining me this evening. And of course, we're going to be back here. Again, we're going to continue this program. Like I said, we're back after 5 months, 6 months or so. We're back with you, and we're going to be here to update you and to inform you, not only of the corrupt practices and the mismanagement of the coalition cabal, but also to talk to you about what we have planned for you, the people of this country, as we take you forward, at least over the next 5 years in the first instance. So Bishop, again, I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Eddie, and thanks to all your viewers and listeners for joining.
Thanks, Bishop, and thank you to viewers and listeners for joining us this evening. Have a good rest of the evening. Bye for now.